You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Draw my life. I was born on a cold January day in North Kansas City, Missouri, just in time for lunch, as my mom says. I was born to the two most loving parents I could imagine, Dennis and Barb. I have an older sister, Annie, who was my best friend and ringleader. I was quite impressionable and would do whatever Annie told me to do. We had so much fun together. We lived in Kansas City, but we had a lake house at the Lake of the Ozarks where we would spend many weekends and every summer swimming, paddle boating, riding the wave runner, and having a blast. These still remain some of my favorite memories of my life. My dad taught me to water ski at a very young age. Soon after learning how to water ski, he motivated me to learn how to slalom, or ski on one ski only. And he even tried to teach me how to barefoot, which I have not yet mastered. I always loved water sports. When I was 12 years old, my parents decided to move our family to the Lake of the Ozarks full time. I would be going into 6th grade, and they promised me it would be a smooth transition because all the kids were going to a new school anyway. Nobody would even know I was the new kid. I had a really hard time with this concept. I had lived right next door to my best friend Leah since the ripe age of 9 months, and this would mean moving 3 hours away from her to a place where I had no friends. Although I transitioned into school well, made great friends, and immediately got involved in sports and academic activities, I was still very resentful toward my parents for moving me away from my hometown and best friend. It probably didn't help that I was entering my teen years and was a hormonal tornado. Throughout middle and high school, I spent many weekends going up to visit Leah, but also stayed busy establishing my life at the lake. I had my Kansas City friends and would go to football games, homecomings, and proms, and did the same at my own school at the lake. It was a very fun way to grow up, and I look back so fondly on my upbringing. I might even feel a little bad about being so mad at my parents for moving me. A difficult time in our family's life will require me to backtrack just a little bit. A year or two after moving to the lake, my sister got swept up by the wrong crowd. Sadly, it led her down a road toward drugs and addiction. There were a few years where it felt as though we had lost her completely. After being such close sisters, now I rarely saw Annie, and when I did, she was definitely not herself. There were a lot of emotions ranging from anger and resentment to deep sadness and pain from essentially losing a loved one. My parents did everything they could to help her emerge from the dark world of drugs, but it is not easy to break a person free from that. The low point was when we had not seen or heard from Annie for several days. The police came to our house and informed my parents that Annie's name was on a list they had for a pending meth bust. They said if we can find her and bring her home, she wouldn't face charges. In 2005, Annie very unexpectedly found out she was pregnant. By the grace of God, her daughter was born healthy in March of 2006. My niece Brooke is a true miracle, and I credit this life-changing event for Annie being able to turn her life around. She later married Brooke's father, Shannon, in 2013, and they welcomed their son Connor into the world. She is an amazing mother, wife, sister, and daughter, and is confident that she will never go back to that lifestyle. In 2006, I start my pursuit of my bachelor's degree at Missouri State University. I love studying and did very well in school. I also joined the MSU water ski and wakeboard team where I skied competitively. I did several circuits of competitive individual wakeboarding in the summers. Through this sport, I met a guy. We dated all through undergrad, and the summer before I started optometry school in St. Louis, he proposed. I said yes. It quickly became apparent that the only strength our relationship had was longevity. After a year of engagement and a 90% planned wedding, the engagement was called off. Though this was a tough time to get through, it was very clearly God's plan for my life. This brings us to the beginning of the second year of optometry school and the part where Brad enters my life.
I was born and raised in a small town in northern Illinois called Polo. It's about 90 miles west of Chicago. It's so small that there isn't even a stoplight in the whole town. As a child, some of my fondest memories are driving my four-wheeler around cornfields, swimming in creeks, and just being a small town kid. Now, growing up in a small town, it was easier to stand out as an athlete and as a student. I loved playing sports, and I excelled in school. My older brother was a great role model most of the time, and I looked up to him, and I still do. He now lives in Michigan with his awesome wife, and they have 3 adorable boys. I love my nephews and wish we lived closer, and I wish we could spend more quality time with them. Hopefully someday. In addition to sports, I spent a lot of time with the youth group in my childhood church. We did an annual mission trip, and I honestly believe I got more out of those trips than the people we helped. My parents were strong role models and extremely supportive. They are very hard workers, and I couldn't imagine any better parents. Now, even though I regularly attended church, don't think I didn't stir up my share of trouble. When I was in 8th grade, I had to do 12 whole hours of community service for shooting my friend's girlfriend with a BB gun. Now, it sounds a lot worse than it really was. We used to have BB gun wars all the time. And then, when I was 14, I got a ticket for unlicensed driving. I stole my parents' car and took it out for a joyride with my buddy. Definitely not one of my finer moments in my past. Now, kids, don't steal your parents' car. The day after high school graduation, I left for Army boot camp. I went to Fort Jackson, and it was the hottest summer of my life. After boot camp, I went to optician school in Yorktown, Virginia. After graduation, my first duty station was in Seoul, South Korea. I was a small town kid living in a city as big as New York. I absolutely fell in love with it. My original orders were only for 1 year, but I extended my orders and spent another year there. After my tour in South Korea, I was stationed back in Yorktown, Virginia. While there, the optical lab I worked at produced over 1 million pairs of glasses. I worked the night shift and went to college during the day. I was able to complete a year of college while still being active duty Army. After I completed the 6 years I owed the Army, I used the GI Bill and went to undergrad at the University of Illinois in Champaign. I was a cheerleader in college and had a wonderful experience. College was awesome. I loved learning and playing and not having any real responsibilities. After graduation, I was admitted into the University of Missouri at St. Louis College of Optometry. Man, that's a mouthful. I was awarded a health professional scholarship by the Navy. I was able to graduate optometry school debt-free. I am currently serving my Navy 4-year commitment. Rachel and I met the first day of school. I thought she was gorgeous, but I had a girlfriend and she had a fiance. We didn't really talk much our first year of school, but both of our relationships ended, and that's where the real adventure begins. We started out studying together our 2nd year of school. We would meet at a neat coffee shop called Picasso's. A song came over the speakers, and I bet Rachel a steak dinner she didn't know who sang the song.
This was obviously before we got to know each other because I grew up on classic rock and my dad used to quiz me constantly on who was singing.
So needless to say, Rachel nailed it. It was Bob Seger's Main Street. Great tune. So first date was over Thanksgiving break. We ate at a Ruth Chris Steakhouse. We ate medium rare steak and drank Sea Glass Pinot Noir wine. To this day, it's one of our favorite wines.
During this date, I literally texted my mother to tell her I was going to marry this man.
Since our first date, we haven't spent more than just a couple of days apart, and even more than a day apart is rare.
In fact, we have literally road tripped across the entire United States, from Portland, Maine to San Diego, California. After spending so much time together in a car, we knew we were meant for each other.
I worked up the courage to ask Rachel to marry me on one of our long road trips in the big city of New York. I planned to ask her on a nighttime shoreline cruise. However, Hurricane Sandy ruined that idea for me. Instead, I asked her in our hotel room after a wonderful night out on the town. New York City will forever be close to our hearts.
We got married at a small winery at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. We were surrounded by loving friends and family and had the most unbelievable fireworks show. And we don't just mean in our hotel room. Wink, wink.
We somehow managed to study and pass 3 national boards in between our engagement and our marriage and our honeymoon. We had each other for study partners, which made a boring time suck less.
Our final year of school, we completed a medical mission trip to Haiti. It was a humbling and life-changing event, and we feel so grateful for the life we live. We can't wait to do more mission trips someday.
After graduation, we packed all our possessions, and the Navy sent us to beautiful Beaufort, South Carolina, where we currently live. After living here for about a year, we longed to start a family. We tried and tried and tried, and nothing happened. We were able to seek help after a year of failing to conceive.
We were lucky in the sense that the doctors discovered our problem almost immediately. It explains why we never even once got a positive pregnancy test. A blessing in disguise that we never had to suffer the heartbreak of a miscarriage.
My viable sperm count was so low that our only option was IVF. We got started right away. It meant that Rachel had to suffer through over 100 shots, countless pills, and multiple procedures. It was mentally, physically, and financially draining. Luckily, we had each other, and we knew God had a plan for us.
The Lord blessed us with 4 embryos. Because the embryo growth slowed down on day 4, our doctor gave us the choice to transfer 1 or 2. All the injections, medications, ultrasounds, and blood draws were all worth it.
Both embryos took. Rachel is currently 14 weeks pregnant, and we could not be more excited. She is due on January 21st, but twins generally arrive early.
We expect to meet our precious babies around Christmas this year, God willing. Prayer is a part of our daily routine.
We are overwhelmed by how loving the YouTube and the Trying to Conceive community has been. You guys have brought more joy to our lives than you can imagine.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to invest in our lives. We will forever be grateful.
Cheers to the future.